Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us. You're in for an exciting conversation. We're here for the Artist Talk with Cosmo Campbell and Jessica Fairweather, whose work is currently on display in the exhibition Observances at the Kay Meek Arts Centre here in West Vancouver. My name is Stephen Snyder. I am the Gallery and Communications Coordinator for the West Vancouver Community Arts Council, and we're thrilled to be able to present these two fantastic artists and share their work with the community. In this conversation, you'll get to know a little bit more about Cosmo and Jessica and all of their backgrounds and passions and inspirations, and you'll get to see some examples of their work. It's going to be a pretty fantastic conversation. And if you have anything you would like to add for any of us joining us live, you can drop those in the chat and we will get to those throughout this conversation. So Observances is on display at the Kay Meek Arts Centre in West Vancouver from February 28th, so it's already up, until April the 9th. It's on both floors of the Kay Meek Arts Centre, and we're so grateful to be able to partner with the Kay Meek to show artwork on the walls of that stunning space. Here in West Vancouver, where the Kay Meek is situated and where you'll be able to see all this fantastic work. That is on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples. And here in particular, that means the Squamish Nation. And we are incredibly grateful to our host nations, neighbors, and community members for their stewardship of these lands since time immemorial. And sort of the lands and the spaces around us are a little bit about what we're going to talk about tonight, because that's a common theme found throughout the artwork from Cosmo and Jessica, because Observances is sort of features both of their takes on not only sort of capturing these scenes around us, but also, if I may say, a little bit of they're showing their reverence for these spaces. It's not just here's what you see, it's kind of here's the feeling, here's the sacredness, the magicalness of these spaces. And you definitely see that joy coming through in their work. So without any further ado, let's meet our fantastic artists. Let's go alphabetically. Let's start with Cosmo. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, thank you very much. Yeah, and first of all, I'd like to say how grateful I am and for this opportunity, and thank you very much for the selection committee allowing me to show my work. It's been a great opportunity. I grew up, as you can probably tell from the accent, in Cape Town, South Africa. Went to art college there, majored in graphic design, and then started out in the ad industry. I was in the ad industry for about 35 years on the creative side, worked in South Africa, worked in London, in the Middle East, and then in Canada, in Vancouver, and then more recently in Toronto, running a multinational agency across Canada. And then most recently, I'm now sort of taken a shift, which is interesting because it's kind of followed my work, taken a shift into a whole different direction. And now I work for an entertainment company, running all the creative product. I've got a great team that I work with around the globe, from Ukraine to China, and here and in Mexico and the US. And that's what we do. And then on the side, I'm exploring my creative ventures as well, doing a lot of photography and painting and things like that. And that's my real passion that I want to keep exploring further.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Cosmo, for sharing this pretty interesting background. And Jessica has also just as interesting a story to tell on her artistic journey. So please, Jessica, introduce yourself to everyone.
Hi, I'm Jessica Fairweather, and I own J Fair W Studios, and I make glass mosaics. I also do lots of work with mixed media. I'm an artist and an art instructor. My mission is to follow my passion and continue learning, creating, teaching, and inspiring. So I'm sort of in the middle of my journey. I have 4 children and a husband, and I really got off to my creative boom here in 2020. I had made the decision that I wanted to dedicate an hour a day to creating art and focusing on my passion. After being a mom for so many years, I really felt like I just needed a little bit of me time. And all of a sudden, my work kind of went into overdrive. For most, COVID was an awful thing, but for me, it actually gave me the time to stay home and do nothing but work on my art. So I started keeping myself accountable by posting daily on Facebook and Instagram, and just sort of showing what I'm doing and following a journey through my learning curve, my process, what I'm trying to accomplish and do. And from there, I've just kind of followed every day to see what happens when I just continue going. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks. Thanks so much for sharing, Jessica. Yeah, you both have these great stories of art, and creativity and making, being such a passion, and as you traverse through all of the various ups and downs and crossways of life, you've finally now been able to sit there and focus on it and make it kind of your sole goal. That's pretty amazing. Not everyone's lucky enough to get to focus on your artwork like that. So speaking of the artwork, we're going to take a quick tour of the exhibition. Just a quick little video, sort of have a brief look at it to whet your appetites. Hopefully, those of you who watch this while the exhibit's still up, this will really get you inspired to go see it, because you really got to see it in person to take in all of the texture and detail and light and color and absence of color and everything. It's pretty great. So let's pull that up. Okay, so this is as you come in on sort of the main floor of the Grosvenor Theatre here at the Kay Meek. This is how we've kind of laid everything out in the atrium. It's pretty wonderful. We've got some bios and statements you can read on each artist, and then we start off with two fantastic pieces from Cosmo. These really great large format photographs, which you feel you can just kind of walk right into. Now we move on to some examples of Jessica's work, some really colorful and textured glass mosaics. And then as you come downstairs to the McEwen Theatre, there's even more art to see. Yeah, so we get some more of Jessica's bold work.
Sure is.
Lots of great shapes that you can find, which I guess is the nature of working with a medium like glass. It's all about shape.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I kind of feel like sometimes like it's like a puzzle.
Yeah, and then move on to more of Cosmo's fantastic pieces, which, yeah, once you get up close, you can see so much texture happening in them. It's so much in the foreground and background that maybe you don't notice at first.
The camera,
and there's the one color piece, which is
contrast.
Great. Beautiful.
Yeah, and they're so vivid and full of life for the most part of them being, in grayscale. It's pretty amazing how lively they are. Yeah, let me get some more of Jessica's work. Great. So that was just a quick little sample of what you can expect, and kind of see how the work sort of complements and contrasts each other and creates a really interesting dialogue. As we've mentioned, a lot of the images are about sort of scenes, a lot of them sort of being outdoor, and then how we kind of interact with or don't interact with those spaces. You can see like in some of Cosmo's pieces, you can see those boat sheds, or there's the factory, or you can see these telephone poles off in the distance. And then Jessica has a lot of things where you've got the Burrard Bridge, and then other scenes where it's just, here's just some animals out in wildlife. So there's a real sort of story within all of your work about us and our relationship to the spaces around us, which I'm sure we'll probably get into more when we get into the next segment of this talk. So yeah, so please check it out. It's up until April the 9th. You can go to the Kay Meek, the hours. You can go check it out Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. To 4 p.m. Or if you consider getting a ticket to one of the amazing programs they have there, and you can hang out and see the art before a show. And you can maybe even sneak in if you don't have a ticket before a show, and check it out before they start letting everyone into the theater. Awesome. So the next portion of our chat, we're going to talk about one work of art in particular. Each artist has chosen a work that kind of exemplifies sort of what they do and the body of work kind of on display. So let's start with Jessica. I'm going to pull up your mosaic here of BC Place, and then you can take it away. Awesome. So, Jessica, please tell us about this really great piece.
This piece is one that I made in 2020, right at the beginning of COVID, and it is it's a view from Queen Elizabeth Park, looking down towards Vancouver. And what I really like about it is the fact that it's a view of Vancouver that shows definite prominent buildings, but at the same time, it's a view that isn't as popular. When you usually see downtown, you see the waterfront or what have you, and some of the sails. So I really like this picture. It showed a lot of sort of the idea of like the green and the forest and what have you. And as I said, I started it in March of 2020. And honestly, that was right when COVID broke. And I was at home with the kids, and I started donating a little bit of time to myself every day. And the reason that it is on the tray the way it is that we were in lockdown, so I wasn't able to get any supplies. So therefore, I used an antique tray from my great grandmother. Hope she doesn't mind. And I honestly used all the supplies that I had around me and created this mosaic. At the time, this is by far sort of the most complex mosaic that I had ever worked on. And it was really a chance to test my skills and see what I could create if I had the time and a layout that I liked or what have you. So I really love it. For me, it also started other things. As I said, I started to document my work. This is, I have sort of pictures of the whole way through. I also started time-lapsing at this point. So you can see me work through it and how I created it. And from there, everything just started to snowball. You know, I was able to, like since then, I think I've done 46 different mosaics, and like each one is really from this one. And the idea of challenging myself and challenging my skills and seeing how to push glass in sort of every direction and see what I can actually accomplish. So yeah, for me, this one is a really, really important piece to my collection, just because it really taught me that to believe in myself and to follow through on what I think I could do and what I think is actually cool. So yeah, I love this one.
I think if I can comment on it, if you don't mind, I think what's great about this piece for me is one of the things about Vancouver and the surrounding area of BC is there's so much incredible beauty. You look out any window and it's beautiful. And this is not a contrived scene of a landscape that you would expect from Vancouver. It's an interesting interpretation on it. I love the kind of symmetry with the tower in the middle, but also the abstraction and the chaos that's going on. You recognize it for what it is without necessarily being able to pinpoint all the details. It's a really fresh kind of interpretation on that view of Vancouver. It allows the viewer to experience the whole scene in a very different way. And I actually really like the tray as well. I think that, sometimes being forced into those situations where you have to make do with something, you get these happy accidents that really work well.
I couldn't agree more with you, Cosmo. And this one for me, as I said, like there's a lot of really happy accidents in this one. When I started, I definitely started building the buildings and what have you first. And when I got to starting to add the green and the idea of the parks and the trees and what have you all around, I really wanted to break up the pieces and make them more random with the idea of the contrast from the nice straight edges of the actual architecture of the city. And then I also wanted to add in the background the deep dark hills and the kind of idea that it's in a valley, and you have like the parks and sort of I think I snuck in a couple little ideas of buildings sort of like way back in the back of the mosaic. So yeah, for me, it's one of those ones that kind of accomplishes all my goals. I really like to think about all those things. And, like it's for me, making art is about creating a memory. And one of the most important things about Queen Elizabeth Park is like, that's where I hang out with my best friend a lot. She works there. Her name's Alana. And, it's very personal to me. Yeah. But I think it's beautiful. I love the way the colors work. I love the dark versus the light. I love a lot of the contrast that I kind of added and thought into it. And as I said, like it's really helped propel my work. And a lot of the things that I was very successful in this mosaic, I try to think about now and incorporate it into the work that I'm creating at this moment.
No, it's great to hear about that sort of that push and that striving, right? And all those accidents and what you've learned. And sometimes artists are like, oh, something a little bit earlier or at this stage, I don't necessarily want to share. But it's great that you're like, there's happy accidents. I've improved. I've done these amazing things, but this is still such a fantastic piece because it shows where I was and all of this joy and all of this, what I had learned up to that point is there. So that's really great to still want to be able to share that.
For sure. Well, I see a lot of joy and a lot of sorrow. As I said, COVID was going on at this time. So it's sort of like a lot, like it's kind of too, like I look at it and it kind of looks like it's a building and it's got all this beautiful whatever, but I also see sort of like stagnance to it and the idea of being isolated and like all that stuff as well. So yeah, just there's so many different parts to it. When I like to create a mosaic, it just ends up getting deeper and deeper as I work on it and more things kind of come and I try to add to it. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a fantastic piece, and I echo Cosmo's sentiment that the tray is pretty unique because everything else in the exhibit has these great wooden frames. There's another piece of the swimmers with the glass tile, but then this one is just so unique. It just feels like an artifact. It's pretty wonderful.
You know what? I think all artists can agree. There's a point where you just have to get it out and get it down. And it kind of doesn't even matter sometimes, like what you have or what your mediums are. And so like, this is a perfect example of, still trying to keep within my style and what I like to do and have you, but at the same time, like making the best out of my situation and still striving forwards.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's so much, as you've mentioned, just variation going on, but there's so many different kinds of glass. You notice that when you see your work, there's really smooth stuff, there's texture stuff, there's stuff that seems to have like glitter inside of it. It's pretty wonderful. How do you go about selecting what type of glass would say make up the greenery as opposed to the type of glass you would use for like the buildings?
Well, I have a huge glass archive. Unfortunately, unfortunately or fortunately, like most artists, I tend to collect supplies. And so I have a large shelf here, and it has all of my supplies in it. And it's organized right now into 12 by 12 sheets into what I would call medium-sized pieces, and I also have what I call smaller pieces. And so I go back to what I have. And actually, when I'm starting to create a mosaic, I usually like to create a plan. So I actually write down what my idea is, sort of what my feelings are towards it, my color palette, what I'd like to achieve. As I said, I'm trying to make myself better. So these things are important to me to be able to refine my skills and be able to look back and to make sure that I am moving forward, to hold myself accountable. So with the glass, one of the funnest parts to me is when part of the plan is what I call creating a palette. And I very often will have an idea of how many different color sources I kind of want to use, or shades of a color. And then it is so fun to go shopping in my glass storage area and pick out all the fun different colors, shapes, what have you. But because it is glass, it is important to think about sort of what I have for supply, because, you know, I don't want to start creating a green background and then all of a sudden run out of glass. So there's a little bit of thinking and a little bit of planning involved, but I enjoy that part. I think as I said, I think it's part of the fun of the whole process of making them.
How many Band-Aids do you go through?
Would you believe I don't go through really any?
It seems like a dangerous sport that you've undertaken here.
You know what? I always tell my students that the only time that you really hurt yourself with glass is when you're cleaning up or putting stuff away, like putting it out, displaying it so that you're getting ready to use it, or you're putting it away. It's always when you're not paying attention to it and when you're tired and what have you. And it's never when you're concentrating and working with it that I find that anyone ever gets cut. It's more when they're, you know, they might run their hands over it, you know, without thinking about maybe like some little shards, or, you know, they put their hand down. But even when you do get a cut, it's just a simple, like little cut, like a paper cut. It heals super fast. It stings for just a second. And honestly, like they're no big deal at all, at least in my books.
So you're not wearing kind of protective gear or gloves or glasses or things like that when you're making these?
I do wear glasses occasionally. It depends how I feel about cutting the glass. I have a couple different tools that I like to use, and as long as, for the most part, especially now that I have quite a bit of experience cutting glass, I feel like I know what glass is going to be difficult to work with and what will cut easily for me. So therefore, I kind of prep for it in the right ways. Yeah.
That was excellent. Thanks so much for sharing, Jessica. That was really cool to hear all that insights. Glass is not necessarily a medium I think most people are exposed to. So thanks so much for sharing.
Yeah, I feel really lucky. I feel like I've kind of picked something that's sort of like a little bit of an odd medium, but in that way, it's really fun because, you know, not a lot of people see it. So yeah, I enjoy it.
So now we're going to get to see some work of Cosmo. Now, Cosmo, we're going to look at two pieces because as you all saw in the tour, there's a very different story sort of being told with Cosmo's pieces. So which one did you want us to pull up first?
The color one, I think. That's the beginning of the story. So let's start there. Not completely the beginning of the story, but it's at the earlier part of the story.
Excellent. Please take it away.
So I think my story and my sort of rediscovery of art, because I've you know spent most of my career in advertising, dabbled on the sidelines, but really had not had time to really focus on my personal creative work. And this was, I like to call it a midlife awakening. I think it was a bit of a midlife crisis, but it's packaged as a midlife awakening. I want to think of it as a positive thing. I spent most of my career working on other people's creative stuff, and I think suppressing my own creativity in that process and always doing other people's things. And when I moved to Toronto, and I was there for 4 years, I didn't know the city. I felt very kind of out of place. And I was doing a lot of business travel as well around the world with the work that I was doing. And I would land up in cities and the jet lag was terrible, or I couldn't sleep at night. And I had a lot of stress, so I wasn't sleeping at night. And I would just go out and wander in the city, and I would take photographs. And so in Toronto, it was a way for me to learn about the city and understand where different parts of the city was. It was a way to sort of educate myself on this new home, but also trying to find beauty in this place where I felt like I'd been transplanted to somewhere that was very antithetical to my aesthetic. So I was trying to find beauty in what I saw as being not necessarily a beautiful environment, and a different way of looking at it. If you can look at something that you would ordinarily just walk past and discard or not consider, and you can find a way to see the beauty in it, to me, that's where the magic is. And so I was shooting a lot of this stuff at night. I had a whole series called Nocturnal Tourist, where I was wandering around. This particular shot is in North Toronto at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was probably about minus 20 degrees out at the time. So I did a lot of that, and you know, as I went through the sort of crisis phase, and then I came back to Vancouver, I figured out one of the things I've got to sort out is this sleep thing. I've got to get back into a healthy track, but I love doing the night photography, and so a lot of the work that I'm shooting is still borrowing from that aesthetic and that feeling, but I'm not shooting it at night anymore. I'm recreating that nocturnal feeling, but doing my photography in the day. And so I'm doing a lot of post-production work in Photoshop to create that aesthetic and the atmospherics of these nighttime shots. But also, I think there are some real advantages aside from the fact that I get to sleep now. But one of them is in the process of shooting the stuff during the day, I can do it on a very short shutter speed. So everything is pin sharp. And when I shoot a lot of my scenes, there are probably about 8 to 10 photographs in any one of those scenes that have all been stitched together. So making sure that you're shooting them at a high shutter speed so that the exposure doesn't change. You capture everything so it's all the tonality is exactly the same, but you don't get any movement. So in most long exposure, which you need for a night shot, or anything that moves will be blurry. So any reeds or any grass, any trees, any clouds that are moving, birds. So you can see in some of those pieces, and I really liked what you said earlier, Stephen, is I'm trying to create an environment that captures the space and makes you feel like you're almost can fall into that place. But you can see the geese pin sharp. You can see every blade of grass is pin sharp. So that's the process or the evolution of the process. I think in the other photograph that you have that you're going to share is a river, is a very simple river, but again, looking at these simple objects, but treating them as graphic shapes, capturing the mood and the essence of that environment and that space. And again, I think the similarity to Jessica's work, and we were talking about it before we came online, is that I don't want to create contrived, obvious images. I think BC is so incredibly beautiful. You can't improve on the beauty. You can't go out during the day, and you can capture a great, full color shot of BC, certainly in the day, but it's almost sickeningly beautiful because it gets to kind of chocolate box or calendar kind of photography. So I want to capture the spirit of it and the beauty of BC, but how you see it in a different way. And to me, these nighttime shots, it's part of my own discovery of the loneliness that I feel, and how you can feel safe in that loneliness. It doesn't have to be scary, although it's even at night. where you would think the black is scary, it can be actually inviting, and it can draw you in and create a little bit of a blanket. It's almost like going back to the womb, that you can sort of fall into these spaces with a dreamlike quality. So that's what I'm trying to create with my work, my photographic work. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, there is a definite warmth to your work. The majority of the pieces that are on display are, as you said, black and white, but they're not cold, right? Like, and there are these sort of these stark, as you said, kind of lonely scenes, but you don't feel cold when you see them. You know, you feel like, yeah, like there is a comfort, there's a warmth to it. And I think that's maybe all the work you've been able to do with the lighting and being able to find these contrasts between the dark and the lights, and where you choose to highlight and accentuate that.
Yeah, there's a lot of texture in them, and certainly this one is not a great example when you see it on screen. You have to see it in person, because each little reed is there, and there's a lot of detail in those blacks. Some of the other pieces, I think, as you get closer to them, you discover new things that are hidden in there, and it's because everything is pin sharp and is to such a high resolution. But I think hopefully it's the kind of thing, when you see the image, there's a graphicness that attracts you to it. And then as you get closer, you get seduced by the details and sort of drawn into it. And that's that feeling of feeling like you've just stepped into that scene, versus just being a picture that you observe from a distance and say, you know, that's nice, but I'm going to move on. So, you know, trying to look for that sort of stopping power in an image that is going to connect with people on an emotional level, not just on, you know, a visual level of an image.
I think your work definitely needs to be seen in person. When I went up and looked at it, I just loved how you looked at it, and I kept taking steps forwards, because I wanted to look at it closer and closer and closer. And I think if you were trying to accomplish having someone feel like they could step into the painting and kind of see like a world around them, I think you definitely hit the nail on the head. Yeah, they're gorgeous.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think part of the graphicness, and part of that, I've got to give a lot of credit to my history in advertising and looking at things certainly in a commercial way, and trying to capture people's attention with a message. But I'm glad it you know, certainly for you, it's coming through in the photography.
Do you have a couple of favorite places in Vancouver to shoot where you find, you know, the lighting to be exceptional, or something that really draws you in personally?
I think it's more of a day-to-day basis when the light's good, or I feel like the cloud cover is right. I don't really mind where I am. I do have a sort of a natural affinity to grunge and to industrial stuff. I'm trying to move away from that and not always go to that as my default. And that's where a lot of the landscapes are as well, but reinterpreting the landscape. And that's what, you know, is coming through in this show, is more of the landscapes. I do love abandoned places. I don't know why. There's something again about the loneliness of it, and trying to capture the spirit of those spaces. I love shooting in the downtown East Side. I love anything that has a different sort of cultural aesthetic that I find attractive. I want to know more about Chinatown. I find, you know, fascinating. I love the culture. I love everything that goes along with it. And that was certainly a part of Toronto that I loved. Very multicultural, lots of interesting new things. But for me, the lighting is more about a day-to-day feeling. And I can see when the clouds are right, I know I'm going to get a great shot, because a large part of it is also that mood that you get from the skies.
So interesting. How long does it take you to do the process of the editing? Like, now that I know that you take these photos during the daytime and then you edit them to be so crisp and so amazing, and then play with, I guess, the image, how long does it take you to kind of, I guess, go through the process of coming up with a piece of work that you really like?
Yeah, it can vary depending on the shot, but I'm usually, I'll shoot multiple angles and multiple exposures of a scene that I like. So I'm probably shooting a couple of hundred images, maybe even 1,000 images if I'm in a place that I really love. Then I come back home and I've got to go through and do a selection process on looking at the different angles, the different perspectives, and then I build all of those scenes out. Then I pick the final one that I really like. Then I'll go into Photoshop and do all of the, squaring everything up, making sure that all the perspectives are in order. And then the Photoshop color correction work. And so in total on a single image, it might take me about 8 hours to do all of that process, the initial vetting, and then through to the selection, down to building out the final image. And I have some images that I love, and then I still go back and I fiddle around with them. I'm a little obsessive compulsive about getting things right. And that is, I think, part of the process that I don't think most people understand with photography is how much goes into the selection. It's not just taking one image and going, oh, I shot 500 pictures. There's one great one on there. There's a lot of constructing of this and pre-planning of it, and then doing proofs and checking the proofs and going back and changing balances and adding more detail or taking detail out where it becomes distracting. So it's constantly editing down until you get something that you're absolutely 100% happy with. And I think that's probably similar to your process. You start with all this glass, all the different colors, you pull out the colors that aren't sympathetic, aren't working well together, and you edit down until you finally got a final piece. I'm just not sure. I think people can understand that in the regular art context. It's a little difficult to understand in photography context.
Definitely. I think it's a little bit underappreciated. Just because it's not seen, you don't understand all the background work that actually goes into it to create like a really beautiful image, especially when cameras are popular these days, but
yeah,
you're really being artistic with it and like playing with the image and trying to achieve something, whatever it is for yourself. I think that's really amazing. Yeah.
And some of these images are pretty huge as well. The file size, up to 2 gigabytes. So they're, when you're working on them as well, it takes a long time, just processing time. But they're huge images, and that's why everything is so sharp, and there's all that detail in there. Even though you look at the shot on the screen, and it looks very, very simple, and it's just a squiggly line, but there is detail in there. And this is blown up to 30 inches by about 5.5, 6 feet wide. But some of them can go up to 10 feet and still be perfectly sharp. So there's a ton of detail.
Yeah, even just you can see some of the ripples in the water. There's so much crispness happening. It's pretty great. I wanted to ask you, Cosmo, your pieces, they're on aluminum, which is really fantastic. I was wondering if you could just share why you chose to have them printed and displayed that way. What does that do for the piece, do you feel?
There are, obviously lots of different ways you can have it framed. I think there's a cost benefit to doing it on the aluminum. Is one of the big things. I was having the show put together. These are not prints that I had and were already sitting around. I was doing this specifically for this show, and there's a cost benefit is probably the biggest one. A lot of photographers are choosing to display their works in galleries on this aluminum. It's a really great product. It's very robust. It's also very archivally kind of accurate, and there's a protective film on top of the image. So one of the big problems with large format prints is framing it and having glass on top, because at a certain point you don't get sheets of glass that are bigger than 6 feet. So that's the maximum size. And then the museum standard, quality glass is incredibly expensive. It can be more expensive than the photographic print, 3-4 times as much. So it just becomes a non-starter. So this is a great alternate solution. They can still be framed afterwards. If somebody chooses to put a frame on them, you can frame them. But the coating on top is almost imperceivable, and it gives a really robust kind of protection to the print. So you can spill wine on it or something like that. You can just wipe it down with isopropyl alcohol or a ammonia-free cleaner, and it's as good as new. So that's probably the biggest reason. It's also incredibly, it's flat and it's not going to warp or bend. So as a substrate, it's a really great solution.
Yeah, no, there's such a great physical quality to both of your work, Jessica, because you can see all the little bits and pieces. You've got those really nice sturdy frames, and Cosmo, partially in the way that you've displayed them, because they're sticking out from the wall because of that aluminum backing, but also you can see that thickness of the print, and it really kind of enhances that this is a thing to look at. This is a thing to hold and cherish. I think that's kind of an interesting way of how you both are presenting sounds like to a degree that's the only way to do it in some cases, especially with the mosaics. But I think having it being so tactile really creates a sense of this idea of revering the work and what you're trying to present in the images and all of the thought and feelings going into it. There's a real sense of this work is something, it's substantial. I think the way you've presented it really helps the viewer focus on that and realize, oh, okay, this isn't just a nice thing I can look at. I have to come in and I have to spend the time with it. I think it's very inviting. It's very inviting and powerful.
Yeah, presentation is a big part of the final product and how people see it, and I think how they take it seriously. And I love. We were talking when you were hanging your stuff, Jessica, about your framing. It's rustic, it's honest, but it really is shows the work off in the best possible light. It enhances the work itself, which I think that's the best that you can ask for from a frame or some kind of presentation, is going to elevate what you're looking at.
Definitely. For myself, I think a frame is very important, just also for the integrity of the mosaic and the longevity, because it's made with glass and cement. It could be prone to having issues, but because they're made the way they are, for the most part, they're extremely sturdy. They're weatherproof. They can pretty much go outside, what have you. And for the frames, they've been kind of a journey of their own. I've started off with not doing any frames, and then having, seeing what happened to the work after time, and then wanting to fix that, and, working on my frames, now going from a softwood, now I'm going to a hardwood. It's just, the refinement and wanting to, to up my quality and start using different things that, work for me. But yeah, I think for me, it's very important. Aesthetic is important. I would feel like things to look finished and polished. And even though they're glass and they're a little bit sort of a little bit, I want to say a little bit hokey, but at the same time, artistic or what have you, they're well constructed, and they'll take time for, they'll last for, if you're kind to them, they'll last forever. So yeah. I just think too, if you want people to pay attention and you want to be taken seriously, you have to take yourself seriously and start, make sure that you're putting up your work and putting your best foot forward. So at the time, I haven't really found anybody that professionally that does my framing. It's really my husband and myself. He sends me out with what I think he thinks I should go by, and then he helps me cut them to size, and we usually work on sanding and varnishing them or what have you, and then we use a nail gun, put them on. And actually I like to do them in the midst of mosaics. I kind of have one right here that I've been working on that has just added the frame to it, and I'm still working on it, but it's part of the piece, you know, for me. Yeah, it just makes them feel finished and polished, and it's nice to be able to just take them and they're done. There you go, you know. Yeah.
Totally. So both of your work, as we've seen, deal a lot with sort of natural spaces, but also with how we interact with them and perceive them. You know, in some cases there are buildings, there are people, or there are the hints of people, or things that people have put into the natural environment. What is it about these sort of spaces and environments and capturing them that you feel you really just need to do? Like, why are these the subjects that you have to get out in the medium that you've chosen?
Who are you asking that question to?
Both of you.
Okay, who's going first? Jessica, you go first.
Okay. For me, for the most part, I feel like my audience and the people that enjoy my work are from Vancouver and know sort of the secret spaces and landscapes or what have you around here. And I try to draw on a lot of nostalgia from my childhood and the things that I enjoy. And the more that I sort of focus on my memories and things that, you know, I really look fondly upon, seem to be sort of my most popular. So I'm always taking moments. The big pink one with the pier and what have you is like the White Rock Pier, and it reminds me, I call it ice cream sunset. It reminds me of eating like bubblegum ice cream and chocolate chip mint and like walking down the pier and having, you know, the tide pools. And then the Burrard Street Bridge. I love the Burrard Street Bridge. It's such a huge place in BC. I mean, who hasn't either been to like Granville Island or looked at that bridge from many directions or seen, you know, the big fireworks that they have yearly. I just think that it's such a beautiful place, and a lot of people have memories and nostalgia from seeing these things. And I enjoy sharing that with people. It means more to me when I make it from something that means something to me, like a childhood memory or a place that was really special to me. And the more like I enjoy making it, and the more that it means something to me, I feel like the better artwork I produce.
I think from my perspective, most of my photography, or this kind of work that I've been doing, doesn't have people in it. And so it's the impact of humanity on the landscape without showing the humanity of the landscape. I think the other thing that I really love is the utilitarian nature of the impact that we have on environments and landscapes. When I'm shooting a lot of industrial buildings or things like that, I love architecture, but there's purposefully designed architecture where the architecture is designed to be harmonious with the landscape or to take advantage of the landscape. But what I love about these other spaces is that it's purely utilitarian. When they build grain silos and they need to put venting ducts, they just throw the venting ducts on the outside. They're not trying to blend them. All of the wiring it's the easiest, most efficient way to build that space. And what you get from that is really interesting textures and tones and patterns happening. And to me, I like to discover, I have a little bit of an issue with humans and our impact on the planet, and being able to represent that in a way, or photograph that in a way, capture it in a way, but without showing the people. As soon as you put people in a photograph, I feel like the viewer's attention goes straight to the people and they ignore the impact that the people have had. So by removing the people, and also, some of these kind of night shots, it strips it back to just the purity of what that space is and the effect it's had.
I love that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Cosmo and Jessica, for sharing these very fascinating insights into your work and your creative process. And so for anyone watching this, please go visit the Kay Meek Arts Centre in West Vancouver and check out Observances, which is on until April the 9th. And you can see the fantastic photography of Cosmo Campbell and glass mosaics of Jessica Fairweather. So thank you, Cosmo and Jessica, for this fantastic conversation. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Hopefully you get a chance to go check out the exhibition. And thank you to the Kay Meek for providing such a beautiful space to showcase this artwork.
Definitely. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been amazing.
Well, thank you, Stephen. You've done a great job hosting.
Shucks. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everyone. And yeah, please go check out Observances featuring Cosmo Campbell and Jessica Fairweather. Take care.